further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Scott Phillips. He is with the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center. He's going to be presenting along with Eric Karaman with Michiana Global Mold, talking about the collaboration with key and partners leads to improved processes and increased competitiveness. Take it away, gentlemen.
Great, great. Can you hear me okay, Kim?
Yep, loud and clear.
Good, good. And
Thanks,
see my
Scott.
screen okay?
Yes, looks
okay,
good.
All right. Well, thanks for the introduction, and thanks also for just this opportunity for the Great Lakes TAAC team to be in front of this group and present our program called Trade Adjustment Assistance for Firms. Really happy to have Eric Karaman co-presenting with me today. As you mentioned, Michiana Global Mold was able to take advantage of the program, and I think people will be interested in Eric talking about how they leveraged it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the program first, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eric in a little bit, let him talk about what they did with it. Our program is called TAAF, Trade Adjustment Assistance for Firms. It's funded by the Economic Development Administration. It was established in 1982, so it's been around a while, but not many people really know about the program, which is why we really appreciate opportunities like this. The program is meant to support manufacturers whose business has been impacted by imports. We're one of 11 centers around the country that manage the program. We're housed at the University of Michigan under the umbrella of an Economic Growth Institute. We have a small professional staff that work with our clients who are in the program to help them come up with plans and put them in touch with people who could do projects for them. As I mentioned, it's the only federal program that is specifically designed to help small manufacturers hurt by imports. It's funded by the Department of Commerce. We're based in Michigan and Ann Arbor. We cover the program for Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. But you can see the little notes here where the other 11 centers are. Each center covers, anywhere from 2 or 3 to 5 or 6 states. Anybody listening on this program or anybody that learns about this program that's not in our footprint for the Great Lakes TAAC, we're happy to put you in touch with your local TAAC center. The program works the same everywhere across the country. And I just want to make a note too. Martin had mentioned earlier that he is with the keynote speakers with the MEP affiliate in Connecticut. All of us TAAC centers work closely with the MEPs in our state. So in our case, we work closely with Purdue MEP in Indiana, MMTC in Michigan, and people like TechSolve and Magnet in Ohio. We're a funder. The MEPs deliver services, and we're a funder of those services. That's the relationship. The types of companies that we help are generally small to mid-sized manufacturers. Their size really doesn't matter per se. I would say the average is between 5 and 10 million and 60 employees. But in our program right now, just for the Great Lakes TAAC, we have companies as big as 68 million and as small as 600,000 a year. Anybody's eligible, as long as they're a manufacturer of some kind. Probably most often the types of companies we help are machine shops and foundries, injection molders, mold makers, tool and die shops, machine builders, stampers, and you can see the list there. It goes on and on. Predominantly any kind of manufacturer, but certainly since we're import related, we help a lot of mold builders, tool and die makers, stampers, injection molders, but any kind of company is eligible for the program. Most companies, once they're eligible, once they're qualified, they become eligible for $75,000 in matching funds to do 1 or more projects, and they can take 3 to 5 years to do those. So in terms of a continuous improvement strategy, this fund is really a nice fit because first of all, it can last 3 to 5 years. And second of all, the use of funds you can use these matching funds for is very flexible. And I think Eric will talk a little bit more about that. Most companies do 3 to 4 co-funded projects, and most companies will do some sort of project to help grow their top line sales as well as their bottom line profit, maybe like a lean project or a certification. We have to report results every year to the EDA in Washington, and people like Eric and our current and past clients get surveyed every year on the effectiveness. The GLTAAC assisted 105 companies over the last 5 years. Those companies collectively employ about 10,000 workers and generate $2 billion in sales. 68% of the companies we've worked with that graduated from the program were profitable, compared to just 44% when they entered the program. So we're proud of that. 77% reported that they're more competitive now than before they started working with the GLTAAC. And since starting these TAF programs, these same firms have increased sales by an average of 46% and their workforce by an average of 23%. So we're required to report that, as all the TACs are, because the government want to make sure that the money's being used and properly and effective. So in terms of the benefits to a manufacturer of the TAF program, first of all, there's no fee to apply. There are some minimal fees once you're approved, your petition is accepted, but they're small. And once you're in the program, you're eligible for up to $75,000 in matching funds. So we're talking about spending $150,000 over some strategic projects to help a company become more effective. We work with you to create a customized action plan. And we have a handful of professional people in our office that have a lot of industry experience that will come out and visit and work with the clients. So it's an outside set of eyes looking at your business. And then once the spending plan is created and we're in the project mode, the service providers that deliver projects for people like MGM can be chosen by the client. However, we also have a database of hundreds and hundreds of service providers in Indiana and Michigan, Ohio, that can do everything from websites to lean training to ISO certifications. There's 3 phases to the program. We help the company qualify for the program. Then we work with them to create their spending plan, how we're going to use the funds. And then once we're through those phases, we're in an implementation mode that can last 3 to 5 years. The first phase, when we first become aware of a company that wants to pursue the program, it can take 2 to 3 months to work with them to create a petition, including all the documentation we need, and that has to go through a legal review in Washington. Once that step is done and they're certified, we visit with the company to create the spending plan, the use of funds. We interview the leadership, look at their strengths and weaknesses, conduct some research about the industry for them. We deliver that plan to them, and once the client is ready to go with that plan and approves it, we submit that. Once that is approved by the EDA, then we're in the 3 to 5 year window to spend on projects. The 3 criteria to qualify for the program, there are 3, and a company has to meet all 3 of these criteria, is that a company's sales must be down by 5% or more over a recent period of time. And that time period or petition period is quite flexible. Over that same period, their average monthly employment needs to be down 5%. I'll just stop and say right now, because people might be thinking of COVID and the impact of the pandemic. Right now is an unusual window of time where quite a few companies can qualify for this program that might not otherwise have qualified. And that's because if they went on furlough or shutdown in the spring of this year, that can easily impact their trends, their employment and revenue trends, and they can show a decline. And we're working with quite a few companies that are qualifying right now because of that. So we're in an unusual window right now. The third criteria is that one of the drivers of those declines in revenue employment has to be impacted by import competition. And what that means is, in MGM's case, Eric would have given us the name of some of their customers whose business was down with MGM. We're required by the EDA to speak with 2 of customers of our clients, and we need at least one of them to confirm that at least part of the reason for the decline is related to a shift in purchasing of foreign competitor products. It doesn't have to be a big amount. Our client's customer does not have to say that they've shifted all the business, but they do, the buyer or whoever we're speaking with does have to say that shift in some purchasing from offshore foreign competitors has been part of the impact. So that satisfies the third criteria, which is evidence of import impact. And I'm happy to answer any more questions when we're done talking about these three criteria. I mentioned earlier, once we're through that phase and the petition is certified by the EDA, our project will assign a project manager to the client. We'll conduct an on-site interview with the key personnel. We'll write a pretty comprehensive analysis. We'll create a strategic recovery plan with timelines and priorities of projects. And then we have to define some milestones and some scopes of those projects. That's the spending plan that also gets submitted to the EDA. Once we're past that step, now we're in the implementation mode and we're using the co-funding, the matching funds. Once a client contacts us or we contact them and they want to initiate a project, it's our job, our project manager will work with the client to write a scope of work and create a three-way contract between MGM, the University of Michigan, and whoever is providing the services, whether it's training or website or something. So we write a three-way contract, and we want those projects to begin as quick as possible so we can have an impact on the business. Our project manager handles all the project management functions. We can write requests for proposals if you want to look at multiple vendors. We write the contracts, you know, if something's not going right and the client wants to cease implementation at any time, that's fine. There's no penalty for that. So we manage all that to say we manage all the paperwork for the client. In terms of the types of projects that people have used the funds for, I mentioned earlier that it's quite you know, it's quite flexible, and that's probably one of the best parts of the program. People use it for marketing and sales projects to grow their top line, new product development, sales development. They might want to hire a business development person for a period of time to open a new market or diversify their revenues. Market research, sales training, any kind of industrial systems engineering, certifications, lean, any kind of leadership training, skills training. We do a lot of succession planning for small family-held manufacturing companies. And then things like cost accounting or customizing software, deploying new software, management development. So basically anything that a third party can come in and help deliver for a company, we can pay for half of. And I always tell people to think of us as a half off coupon book. You don't get qualified as fast as you might wish, but it's good to get it in place because there's always projects to do, and continuous improvement projects tend to go on continuously. So once you have this in place, like I say, it's like a half off coupon book. Sometimes people listening to this directly may not qualify, or may not be part of a manufacturer can qualify, but maybe some peer companies or you interact with other companies like the association does. What I always tell people who refer people to us is to think of these four things. Look for a company whose sales are either flat or declining, their employment is flat or declining, and if they're in a bidding business like mold making or tool and die, if their win rate is declining. So if they're losing more quotes, in particular, if they're losing them to foreign companies. We talk a lot to, when we work with mold makers and we end up talking to plastics processors and injection molders as their customers, we know that a lot of times their OEM customers require them to quote a foreign competitor. And so even if you're not down, maybe you're not down with an existing client, but maybe you've lost a recent bid to a new customer, to a foreign competitor, that lost bid can help you qualify for import impact. So these are the types of things, that just, if you're talking to somebody and they mention any of these 3 or 4 things, it's worth a phone call with me or somebody at the TAAC. Usually if we're talking to the controller or the owner or somebody like that, in a fairly short conversation, we can tell if it's useful use of your time to pursue the program. We don't want anybody pursuing the program and submitting documents if it's not likely that they're going to qualify. And we can usually tell that fairly quick. I mentioned earlier, just because we may have people on the phone call here or listening to a recording from anywhere in the country. So here are the 11 TAC centers. We're the Great Lakes TAC right in the middle, but there's 11 centers and we work with each other and refer customers to each other. We work with clients that have multiple locations that cross our boundaries, so we coordinate. And like I said, we also work with the MEP affiliates in each of the states, and we all have an extensive database of consultants and providers. So if you're outside of Indiana, Ohio, or Michigan, please contact me and I can put you in contact with the right center. And I'll just end with my contact information. So this is who I am, and you know, you can reach me through this information or through the AMBA, or just find us on the website. There's a lot more information about success stories and the types of spending programs that we do on our website. Yeah, so with that, I think I'd like to turn it over to Eric and let him talk a little bit about his experience with the program.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate that. Appreciate being part of this forum this morning. You know, and being an advocate for this program, which I believe in, which helped us tremendously. And just want to kind of touch base on some of the points that Scott made and discuss it from kind of a client company's perspective, so you can understand how to get into it and exactly what to expect once you do get into it, because there's a lot of good things here, and it certainly is a program that I would highly recommend everyone take advantage of. Usually you see, you know, I mean, you hear about government programs and you think a lot of tape, a lot of red tape, and a lot of paperwork, but this is truly one that I think is easy, is convenient, and it's helpful. So if you want to bring up the next slide there, Scott.
Sorry about that.
Okay, great, thanks. No, sorry, go back one there. We were introduced to the program back in the summer of 2017 by one of our customers. This particular customer was actually a minority-owned business, and they took advantage of an awful lot of grants and government assistance type programs. And so we got to talking, and they recommended this one, and they said, you know, this would be really good for you guys to get into, take a look at it. So we went ahead and contacted John Antos with the GLTAAC. And John was a great guy to work with. He was a plastics guy. I think he had a lot of injection molding experience, and he was happy to come out and talk to us and see if we could qualify. So he did come out, and he helped us with our plan, our adjustment plan. And you know, and I have a copy of that plan right here. It's about 45 pages, which sounds daunting. It sounds like it's. I mean, for a guy that has a hard time getting through his emails every day, I take a look at something like that and say, wow, this is going to be too much work for me. But at the end of the day, they basically wrote the whole thing just through a series of interviews and through a couple visits. They were very, very helpful in preparing the paperwork that ultimately went off to the government for approval. As Scott mentioned, the basis of the plan has to do with the harm that the company has experienced because of some type of foreign competition. In our case, and I'm sure with many mold makers out there, they've experienced some amount of harm from the China imports, and that's particularly what was the basis for our claim. And as Scott mentioned, I mean, it was just as easy as getting some of our customers to say, hey, you know, yeah, we've bought a few molds from China, which, you know, if China wasn't around, we would have bought those domestically, and have them kind of agree to talk to John and his staff, or the GLTAAC staff, and support that. That's really all you need. That's all you need to do to get going with this thing. And like I said, that was a very, very painless part of it. I'm gonna pop up the next slide there, Scott. So our total assistance that we got was $150,000, which I think is the max you can get, which means 75,000 of it is paid by the TAC fund, and then we come up with the other 75,000 as you engage in projects over that span of 3 to 5 years. Initially, whenever we put the plan together, we budgeted for basically money to be spent in 4 different areas: some organizational development, we had marketing and sales, manufacturing support, and some what we call support systems, which would be potentially ERP and stuff like that. But again, think whenever you're thinking about using funds, think it primarily has to do with, I'm going to call intellectual talent or consulting type work. You can't use the money to buy machinery and equipment. So it's primarily for consulting type services, which, you know, at the end of the day, you can find an awful lot of uses for those, an awful lot of good uses for those types of funds. Now, what ended up happening with us is, even though we had money diverted to 4 different areas, we ended up consuming all of it with marketing and sales type efforts, which we found we were getting a decent bang for the buck on. So I want to pop up the next one. So just some of our experiences with some of the projects we've had that we use the funds for. And then I want to get back to, and I think Kelly Kasner's on the line with us. She's the sales manager for MGM. She actually started out, and we'll talk about her project a little bit later, but she started out as as one of the consultants, quote unquote, that we used. One of the things that you're going to need to be kind of clear with your consultants are the program, the process is a little different. And it involves, they have to enter into a contract with the GLTAAC, kind of a 3-way contract between yourselves and the GLTAAC and then the consultant. And then they bill the consultant for half of the services, along with, they'll bill you for the other half of the services. So they actually split their invoicing. Half of it goes to the consultant, or half of it goes to the GLTAAC, and then half of it would go to you as the client company. So first project we commissioned, we hired a gentleman to try to find us some independent sales representatives, basically just 100% commission reps. Worked with us for about a year. His particular this particular contract was success oriented, so we paid him based on the level of success we had finding reps. That was pretty limited in our success, so we moved on from him, and we ended up getting into the second project we used funds for. Was we hired a lead generation service to try to help find some injection mold requirements out there in the industry. And we still to this day use that company. I mean, they were, I would say, very successful in their outreach and in generating a lot of good leads. One of the problems we ran into was they were generating so many leads and they required an awful lot of nurturing and following up on that our internal talent just didn't have the time to do. So we then used additional TAC funds, and you want to pop up the next slide there, Scott? We used the additional TAC funds to hire what we called a business development expert. And that ended up being Kelly Kasner, and she worked with all of the leads that we got from Factor, and who was the lead consultant that we're using, and basically nurtured those and grew those, and really did a great job for us on the business development end. So earlier this year, our funds ran out for the TAC funds. It was like I said, about 3 years I think it took us to use up all the funds. And the program between the lead generation company and Kelly was so successful that we kept both of them, and we still use them, and we hired Kelly as a full-time sales manager for us. So She was one of those people that went from the consultant down to a full-time employee for us. And so I don't know, Kelly, if you've got anything to add from your side that you wanted to say from your experiences with the program and how it actually worked from a consulting side.
Morning, everyone. Yes, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Scott, for outlining the program. So as Eric had mentioned, I originally came on board to work with Michiana Global Mold through the TAF program, and I was appointed as the project manager and engaged in an agreement. Went through the interview and helped develop the recovery plan, and then worked with the outside third-party lead generation firm to do some qualifications and market research and come up with a sales plan, and then do the implementation of the business development. So the logistics behind the scenes of working with Scott's team with the TAF included, monthly reports so they can quantify the measurable results. It was verified through Eric with regard to the reporting that we were achieving the certain milestones, making sure that the deliverables were executed. And so it was a very smooth and seamless process. It requires a little, paperwork and, the invoices that are predetermined and who to send those to. But it's a pretty seamless process. Coming on as an independent sales consultant, just to keep in mind, you could utilize one of Scott's team members. They can appoint a project manager for you. However, if you do have someone in mind to bring on as an independent contractor through a 1099 schedule, such as what Eric did with myself, they can accommodate that as well. So they're willing to work with someone that you have in mind. Or if you're looking for an industry expert, they have a great team and pool that you could utilize and to work with. So, but the program was very successful, and the deliverables are very easily outlined. And although we primarily used it for business development and for marketing purposes, as Scott alluded to and demonstrated earlier in the slide, there are a lot of internal opportunities and internal processes and business development within that are considered eligible projects to work on and to utilize these funds for. So, just take a look to see where your pain points were and utilize the funds for that particular purpose. But it just happened to work out well for us on the sales and marketing side. But as a result of that, I have to say we came into a keen awareness of where internal pain points are, maybe that was going to help us in the business development area. So it all comes full circle in the end.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And there's just so many great uses for these funds. I mean, if you're looking at, maybe you're not ISO certified and you want to get it and you need a consultant, use it for that. Maybe you have a piece of equipment out there that you need some additional training on. You can hire a consultant for that. I mean, there's just so many different uses for these funds, and take advantage of it. I mean that. I mean, it's out there, it's available. It's and these Scott and his staff are extremely easy to work with, very, very accommodating. And like I said, I just encourage everyone to take advantage of it to their best potential.
Great.
Is there any questions that we might be able to answer for anyone?
Kim, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm muted. That's the story of my life. Oh, thanks very much, Eric and Kelly, for joining in and adding to that, and Scott, all three of you, thank you so very much. As I stated in the beginning, I'm so excited about this program and what it can offer to our members right now to manufacturing. And you brought up, we've got some questions. I'm going to get to those in just a second, but you brought up a key point, Scott, that companies that maybe before might not have qualified due to circumstances, unfortunately, may now qualify. And I mean, this can be used, as Kelly said, and everybody stated, across a broad range, right, of areas within your operation. So the fact that the that you can do a pre-qualifying question, 5 minutes, and you can pretty much tell if a company's going to qualify or not. I just think to myself, this is a no-brainer. You know, why not see if you qualify? Now, I do have a question on that point, though. So a lot of people's shops are not open right now. Some are due to this situation. Can that pre-qualifying call be done over the phone, or does it need to be done in person in somebody's shop?
No, so the pre-qualification call is just an easy phone call.
Okay.
Early on. And that's the first step to get the petition development process started. And even Kim, even the site visit, because of COVID and so forth, we've been doing most of the site visits remotely over the phone and Zoom conferences and stuff. So
okay, so
yeah, we can accommodate the circumstances right now.
Right, awesome. That's the right answer. That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've got a question here from Nick with Legacy Precision. And I don't know if you have your chat open, if you can see that question, Scott. Can you expand on what qualifies for being directly impacted by imports?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't see the chat, but let me answer the question.
Okay, it's on the bottom. You can, yeah, but let me finish the question then for you. You mentioned one being potential customers saying they sourced from a foreign nation. Are there any other acceptable proofs?
Really, the two things, that's the most common one. So the most common one is that a client of ours has an existing customer who's recently, in the current period, purchased one mold or a couple molds for whatever reason from a foreign competitor, and that can include Mexico, Canada, India, anywhere. The other possibility is that it's what we call a lost bid. So maybe you don't have an existing customer whose business is down, but maybe you've recently been invited to bid for a new customer, a new plastics injection molder or processor, and you've lost that bid to a company out of Canada or China or Thailand or wherever. So a lost bid can help show evidence of import impact. Yep, but I should also add that, you know, for clients, sometimes they're pretty nervous about these calls. You know, they either don't want to put their customers on the spot or make them feel uncomfortable. But just so you know, the way we handle that is we work with our client to send a scripted message to their buyers or customers ahead of our call so that they know who we are, why we're calling, and what we're going to ask. And we really only ask 2 or 3 questions, and those calls usually take 2 minutes. We ask them to confirm that their business is down with our client and that at least some reason or portion of that was related to purchasing from a foreign competitor. And we try to ask what country the foreign competitor is in. But we don't need to know any more than that. We don't need to know the name of the competitor. And we also make sure that when we make those calls, that customer knows that anything they share with us, any information in that phone call or email, is confidential by federal statute. We know that sometimes buyers or companies, if they're big especially, feel uncomfortable acknowledging that they've moved business overseas. But because of the non-disclosure that we put in place and the federal statutes, none of that information is made public or shared with anyone. So that tends to help make the people a little more comfortable to take our call.
That's helpful information, Scott. Thank you. So I'm just curious, the application process, I know that Eric said it was a very long, a lot of pages, but that you guys really handle that, which is fantastic. How long does that process usually take to put that together?
Sure. Well, I think what we should do is talk about 2 processes. One is the application process where we're putting a petition together. And then there is the plan, the spending plan, which I think is what Eric was talking about. On the first step, the petition, again, that process can take maybe a couple weeks or up to a month to put together. And we do tell people that there will be, work by usually their accounting people. So we need to collect P&Ls and financial information and some employment documentation. So there is, the bad part about the program is all the work is up front and all the benefit is at the end. but there is some effort to get the information we need to put the petition together. And
Right.
on the other step, the step 2, which is the spending plan, that's where we visit and interview Eric and his staff and get their input. But our team really does write that plan. It is their plan. They own the recommended steps, but we try to do all the heavy lifting.
Right.
So I would say in both the application process and the recovery planning process, we try to do as much work as we can, but there is effort required by the client.
Right. You know, let me ask you a quick question. So you put all this effort in and you get the grant approved. And what happens if you change your focus?
So we
Midstream.
try, yep, 2 things. So we're trained to not call it a grant. I mean, it's nothing wrong with you calling it a grant, and people often do, but it's a matching funds program, technically speaking. But their plans do change, and 2 things can happen. Is first, we write the recovery plan to allow for some flexibility and changing needs. We know that they might enter the spending program thinking they need a website, and a year later they need a lean program or something different. We try to write it so that we can maneuver and change according to needs, just like Eric did. The other thing is, if there's a drastic change in needs, we can resubmit that to the EDA. So the plan can change if it needs to.
Okay, great. That's good to know. So I've got a question here from Scott Jacobs. He is asking, are there any job creation or retention requirements like other grant programs?
There's no requirements. I mean, we track that in the survey and we ask that information, but there's no commitments that a client has to sign up for at the beginning of the program.
Okay, that's good to know. So Scott, what if we have multiple, what if they have multiple locations? If a company does.
Right. So, and that's not unusual at all if they're a bigger company. If the multiple locations, if they're all under one legal entity and that legal entity is in our 3 states, then we work with them. We work with that company, even if the projects are going to be implemented at multiple sites.
Okay.
The only thing that gets a little tricky is if we're working with a big multinational or a multi-site company that spans TAAC geographies. So maybe they're an automotive supplier and they're in Indiana and South Carolina. If some of the project work is going to be done in South Carolina, then we'll coordinate with that other TAAC center. But the answer to your question is we can make that work. It's not a big obstacle.
Right. So what about an international parent company? Can you apply for this if that is your situation?
Yes, you can, and that is not uncommon. The real requirement is that you have a legal entity that is U.S. based. And in our case, we work with companies who are registered in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. But you do have to have a registered business in a U.S. state. You can be foreign owned, but you have to have a legal entity here.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that I don't see any more questions coming in. Does anybody have any more questions to pose to the group? You know, this whole presentation is going to be available after this forum is over, the end of next week. I shared Scott's contact information. I think I know Eric and Kelly well enough that they would be happy to entertain any questions. If anybody has questions for them on the process and you want to reach out to them directly, I know that they'd be willing to share. I don't know, we've got a handful of AMBA member companies, manufacturers that have taken advantage of this. And I just think this is low hanging fruit, kind of. I mean, I know it's not a gimme, and I'm not minimizing the amount of effort it takes to go ahead and through the application process, but I just believe that it's so well worth it.
Kim, I would just like to say thank you again to you and AMBA for letting us be part of that. We've been a member now of AMBA for a year ourselves, which was unusual. We had to go to the federal government to get permission, but we think there's members that can take advantage, and we wanted to get the word out. And frankly, we've learned a lot by participating in AMBA conferences and things over the last year. And also a big thank you to Eric and Kelly for their comments about the program. It was probably one of the best endorsements we've ever had, and it wasn't even paid. So really appreciate that.
Well, there's nothing better than an endorsement that comes from the heart, right? You don't have to put a lot of work into it. So We appreciate you guys sharing, and we appreciate this event.